I want to thank Ben Liebrand. I want to come back to Ben Liebrand again.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Ben, I want to touch something really important. But go ahead, ask your question, please.
Yeah, what I'll do is, as that little bit of techno babble just got a little bit too technical, I'll see if I can make a schematic, so people can wrap their heads around how I did it back then, because it's become a little bit of a technical story. But see if I can get some nice cranes out and make a drawing, and so it becomes.
Well, let me help you with this. Let me help you with this. Everyone, let me explain something about what he's trying to say. So what he was doing this is pre-MIDI.
No, MIDI's already there. Yeah.
Okay, so the MIDI's already there. So if people understand what MIDI is, okay, it's musical instrument digital interface. He's using time code to lock up. What kind of time code? FSK or SEMP in those days?
SEMP, and I was using the Roland SBX80.
Okay, wait. Let's explain that. Let's break that down. So guys, if you ever went to a movie and you see the numbers, in the bottom is these 4-digit sets of numbers with colons in between. That would be what happens is when you're doing a movie, let's say, we're going to talk in a movie sense. When you're doing a movie, what happens is in certain parts of the movies, there's different times in the movies. So in order to be able to put sound and audio to lock up so that you don't have the lips moving opposed to the voice and the music, the time signature that's on the movie would lock up with a code sound that sounds like that on your tape. So that would lock up to your computer. And that's what he was doing in a sense without the movie part. He's doing all that magic, bouncing stuff digitally. And it's crazy, brother. I didn't know you were that, in deep like that. I'm like, I was thinking, see, here's what we're thinking, okay? Because we're coming from a long line of remixes from the Americans in those days, your Tom Moultons, John Luongos, all those guys. And what they were doing is they were going in these studios and they had the tape machine, the multi-track with all the tape, with 24 tracks. Some of them had 16, some of them had 48, depends on the technology of the era of the time. But most of it was 24 tracks. And the band would play on each part of the track. Drums would be on its own track, bass and this and that. What you're saying is you were doing that with SEMP and bouncing with digital, with no tape. Wow. No. But you were using tape. Yes, using it.
But the big difference is that I know a lot of people back then did remixes, but they came into a studio, and when they came into the studio, they had an audio engineer, they had a mixing engineer, then they had somebody coming in doing the keyboards, then they had somebody programming the drums, and in the end, it would be their remix. But the way I was working was, it's just me. I'll be in the studio and I'll have an engineer explaining how the routing works in the studio. But once the routing is in place, and once I've got all my outboard gear in place, I'll be doing all that stuff and taking that stuff back home and doing all the overdubs and doing the final mix and doing the final mastering, and even driving the tape to the courier service if it was past pickup time. So it's a different way of working, but it allowed me total freedom. And you can imagine, if you are in a studio and you have a mixing engineer, you have a keyboard player, and you have people around you, if at the end of the day you would say, meh, I don't like it, I'm not feeling it, I want to trash everything we did today and start over new, there would be a discussion. And the way I was making these remixes was like, I don't want to have that discussion. I want to be completely free when I have the feeling that the path I'm taking is not leading to what I want it to be, that I can just delete 5 days of work, start over new, and make it the way I feel it needs to be. And the only way of doing that was just doing it by myself. And that meant that I needed to be aware of all the technical stuff to make that happen, because, I'm not using an engineer.
Wow. Well, that's where I guess, you have the knack for the computer side. You picked that up very quickly. For some people, they don't seem to ever understand it. I mean, I know a lot of guys like T. Scott, and I know you know the names. T. Scott was very computer like you. He wanted to know everything that was going on with the computer, with the sequencing. So he was able to translate what was in his mind to the music. Because if you don't understand the technology, how do you explain this to someone?
Yeah.
But you're hearing in the mind.
The same parallel goes for people spinning on vinyl, and people, I've spun on vinyl for more than 25 years, so I've paid my dues. But when I at a certain point see that there is this new technology and there are these new players, and Pioneer was making the CDJ 1000, and I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for, because now I can do what I want, and I can do it in different speeds at the same pitch. This is what I've been waiting for, and I have the technical insight to make that determination and make that choice. If you're not interested in the technical side of things, you are very much prone to stick to what you know, being vinyl, and making all kinds of excuses for not going along with technology, coming up with all kinds of excuses why you want to play from vinyl, claiming magical properties or whatever.
Magical properties.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Hang on. Let me give you now the argument from most people. We have the analog lovers, and then you have the new school of digital. So please define the difference of the analog vinyl opposed to the digital USB stick WAV file.
Okay. First of all, everybody listening to this, are you properly seated? Are you not in any position that you will fall onto the floor? Because here it's how it is. When digital came out, people at that time were so sick and tired of hearing tape hiss that they were making productions getting rid of all those noise artifacts they could get rid of. So they cleaned up anything and everything they could, because those were people that had spent decades mucking about with tape, being sick of all the noise, being sick of all the hiss and all the distortion, and now suddenly they have this format where they can record onto digital, and they don't have to muck about with all that hiss anymore. So they're cleaning up their productions to the point where it doesn't sound natural anymore. So it's not a mistake, or it's not a property of digital that digital sounds digital. It's something that happened with the people using it. People being sick and tired of tape hiss. Now they have digital, so now they clean everything up. So way back in the beginning, there has been a period where digital recordings just sounded too clinical. That's not due to the format, that's not due to the technology, but that's due to how people work with it. To make a comparison, when everything was mono and stereo came out, people made crazy mixes. People had the band playing on right, had all the vocals playing on left, had the bass player playing on right, and had the keyboard player on left. Crazy mixes. That's not a fault of mono versus stereo. No, that's a fault of the people getting accustomed to this new format and learning how to work with it. So digital can supersede analog any moment of the day. And the fact that digital has no degradation, and especially with the cost of backups, it's no problem whatsoever to keep all your digital files backup. And a digital file is as clean as it was on the day it was made. And analog, having made my series of Grand 12 inches for almost 20 years, I know that people look up to analog and consider it this holy of holiness place with magical, magical properties, but it just isn't. And if you want to cling on to that, you are getting into the realms of religion and not the realms of fact, because fact is, it just works. It just works perfectly, and there's no reason whatsoever why analog today would sound better than digital, because it just doesn't. It just doesn't. So if people are falling from the seats now, they can get...
Come back on your chairs, everyone. I know he kicked your asses with that. That's Ben Liebrand for everyone. Let's applaud him for his...
I am so very sorry to come across like this, but...
Ben, this has been the story of all of us, my friend. Everyone always asks us, do you hear the difference? It's tough. I hear sometimes in records that I know I played off of vinyl, I can hear a huge difference than the digital. It's just organic. It's an organic sound.
And it can very well be that you are accustomed to not having a proper high end, because what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of records, which they are now so adamantly referring to back in the 70s, those records were cut with a high cut filter, getting rid of everything above 15 and a half kilohertz as a standard, because it would give so much problems trying to get that top high end into your vinyl that it was so much easier just to filter it off. So there are mounds and mounds and mounds of vinyl cut back then, which don't even have any information about above 15 and a half kilohertz. If people have not been present at a record cutting, if you have not been there yourself and have heard the difference between the source and what comes from vinyl, unless you've been there and unless you've heard, A-B, this is what I'm putting on vinyl, and that is coming back from the cutting, and then still from the cutting you have to make the negative, and then from the negative you have to make the stamper. From the stamper you have to press it back into vinyl, and from the vinyl you have to play it back again on with your stylus. So that's 4 mechanical conversions, 3 still to come after this first cutting. If you hear the difference between what it is and what it becomes after it's cut, you'll agree, yes, I'm the nice transparent high end I had, it's no longer there. And the chunky bass drum, it sounds fantastic on vinyl, but it's not the chunky one I came into the studio with, because that one went even lower. But we can't cut that, otherwise, the needle might skip because the grooves might touch. So if you've never experienced that, the only thing you're holding on to is this religious kind of belief that analog has magical properties, whilst it hasn't. It just hasn't. On the move.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now, Ben Liebrand, the remixer. Has Ben Liebrand ever been the writer-producer for those that are watching?
Yes.
On the other side of the chair.
Yes. Not as often as I would have loved, but back then, with all the productions and all the assignments that I had, it truly was 24/7. So getting the moment to get around to doing your own stuff was only when, for the first time, when CBS asked, okay, we have done this remix of Eve of the War, you've done the Rough and Ready mix of Ram Jam Black Betty. I think we want to put together a compilation album. And he said, well, if you guys are considering a Ben Liebrand album, I'd rather put stuff on there by myself rather than it just being a compilation album of other artists. So that was the first time I had to take out time to do my own production, my own writing prior to the production. And that resulted in Styles in 1990, I believe. And I did another album just a couple of years ago, Iconic Groove, in 2015, where I remember coming home with Change, the album of Change, which has Lover's Holiday and Searching and all that beauty on there. And I remember taking it out of the sleeve, putting it on my record player and lowering the needle in the groove and having the album in my hand, and a very special feeling, a state of mind. Vinyl, by the way. A very special state of mind. So in 2015, I decided I want to record an album to not only capture the traditional way of doing the production, the old school way of doing the production, but see if I can capture that state of mind which I had when I listened to that Change album for the first time. And on that album, it is songs which I have written, which I have co-written. And those are, to make a distinction between the rest, those are things where you start with absolute silence and you start with just an idea. And the first idea would be iconic groove. I think I would like to try to make an iconic groove. I think I would like to make a bass line which might be in the same realm as Another One Bites the Dust, Good Times, all the chic, all the Sister Sledge stuff, all the funky stuff. Let's see if we can come up with a bass line. So now we've got the bass line. What can we do with the chords? Add the chords to that, and then that kind of expands into production. Difference being, remix, you start from something which is already there, and these productions start with blank media, tape, silence, digital bits, which are all still zero. So
but did you find it harder and challenging opposed to doing a remix?
Yes, it is, and it is harder for this reason, because with a remix you have something you start from. I've mentioned this in another interview before. It is like, okay, we're going to make a custom car now, and it's so much easier if you can start with the bumpers. You have the bumpers, and that will take you to the shape of the car, and that will take you to whatever you're going to do then. And maybe in the end, you're even going to lose those initial bumpers. But it's so much easier if you have something to start with. And with that same idea, I started Iconic Groove. I was in the Netherlands with Marcel Schimschijmer on bass, Jochem Fleidsma on guitar. And I asked Marcel, I just want a kick-ass bass line. I want the kind of bass line that doesn't have to fit in anything. I want to have the kind of bass line which everything has to fit to that bass line. So bass line is the lead actor here, is the lead role, is the main part. Whatever feels cool. And he would lay down something. He said, oh, that's nice. I'd like to have in the last note, make it a little bit more jazzy. Make it, just take it one half note down. See what happens then. And yes, that's nice. Yes, that's it. That's the one I want. Hit record. And we recorded the bass lines. And that again gave me, compared to making a car, that initial set of bumpers. And then I had my bass line, and that determined what the keys would be, and that determined what the rhythm would be. And so it is very easier, so much easier if you have something to start with, something to start from.
During the course of your remix career, and this happens to many of us, and the changes of music that were happening, the adaptations of your work habits, did you find yourself changing your sound along the way to keep up with the let's not say competition, but the people around you that were also doing remixes? Or did you stand and believe to stay what Ben Liebrand does and not veer off that track ever?
To answer that last question, yes. I am very much someone, especially when it comes to mega mixes and stuff like the Grandmix and that kind of stuff, I have my style, and I very, very seldom listen to other people's mixes, because simply I don't want to be accused of taking someone's idea. And the easiest way to do that is just not to listen to other people's mega mixes, just making my own style. So that's one part. And I'm Dutch. I don't mind being stubborn. And
that mean only wait, I'm sorry. Let's have a clarification. What does that mean? Oh, I'm Dutch. Does that mean we're all Dutch are stubborn people?
Well, to make it simple.
Please.
To make it simple. A lot of people are too polite to be honest, whilst the Dutch are sometimes too honest to be polite. So if I feel it in a certain way, then I just can't help myself to just saying it the way it is. But at least you know that, if you're dealing with me, with Ben Liebrand, I'm not making a spiel. I'm not presenting a person you would want me to be or whatever. And I'm not playing games. So I'm actually just telling it as it is and being honest about it. And, sometimes people might get a little bit offended is a big word, but I just like to keep things straight, keep things real, keep things fair. And so that's one point. Circling back to the question, evolving along with the music styles and the sound, I very clearly remember 1993 coming along, and it was filled with stuff in the charge by Captain Jack and a whole bunch of Euro, pardon my French, rubbish. And I came at the point like, okay, if this is now what charts in the charts, I know for sure that I cannot make something which I will feel great about, because I would have to make something which I don't like to begin with, which made it very difficult in 1993 to continue in the music business, because I just felt like there is so much stuff going on which I just don't like it. It's just not up to par. It just hasn't the quality. It's cheesy beyond cheesy, and I'm just no. So in 1993, I kind of switched to doing all the visuals, and spent a whole bunch of years just concentrating on computer graphics, animation, video compositing, Photoshop, artwork, and all that kind of stuff, until the time came around again that music started to become interesting again. So rather than trying to keep up with a market which I felt like, this is not my thing. This is really not my thing. And as you stated in the beginning of this interview, I do pop, I do bordering on rock, I do hip hop, I do rap, I do house, dance. I don't want to confine myself to any kind of genre, but it has to be quality. It has to, it has to have a richness and a satisfaction to it. And if it doesn't, I'd rather not make it.
Ben, have you ever been wrong? And I've been wrong on records where I've turned down work and later regretted it. Has there been ever a project that was presented to you from one of the big companies or even a small independent where you said, no, I'm not doing it, and then later you went, damn it, I was wrong on that?
I have been asked on the height of, do you know Ace of Base?
Oh, sure.
Right. On the height.
Big American teen, well, not teen group, but young kids loved Ace of Base in the early 90s here in America.
So on the height of their success, I was asked to do remixes for them, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't. That was one of those things where I felt like, yeah, that's not my thing. Same with Modern Talking, which is a German band. No, and never regretted it, because, that's one of those things where, to begin with, the music is, the whole thing is, it just doesn't appeal to me. And I don't have the feeling that I can bring it to the point where I will have a good feeling about it. So I just won't. A track which was also offered to me was by the Gypsy Kings.
Oh, yeah. Bambaleo?
Round about that time. But back then, I had with the Gypsy Kings, It's Fantastic As Is. it really is fantastic as is. It is so acoustic and it has everything it needs to be. And looking back at it now, I think I might have, do an extended version or do a version that has a nice intro and a nice break or a nice mixable outro or whatever. But I probably wouldn't have changed anything regarding the approach, regarding the original sound of the Gypsy Kings. And that's one of them where I felt like, maybe I could have given it a go, and very much respecting the original production and not wanting to change the sound, but just making it into a more DJ playable version. But for the rest, you make your decisions, you make your choices, and I must be lucky that I've not come into that kind of a sour circle of regret or whatever. I count myself lucky. So.
Ben, at the time when you were doing these mixes, and we knew about the Ben Liebrand extended mix or Ben Liebrand mix, who else in the Dutch area was another go-to at the same time when you were doing this? Were you the only one, or was there other people doing this as well?
There were other people in the Netherlands. One of them was Peter Slaghuis. And he did brilliant compilation mixes. And Peter was someone who approached the whole thing much more with a gut feeling. So Peter had he had all the equipment. He had all the money to get all the equipment. He had his own studio, but he just did what he felt he wanted to do, and he wasn't someone that submerged himself in menus and sub-menus of samplers. He just got the stuff in there, made sure it made the sound he wanted to, and then got going. And a different approach to the maybe over-nerdy way that I was doing it. Funny enough, though, that when we actually met at a particular point in our lives, we could get along just fantastically, maybe because we have these different approaches to do music. So Peter Slaghuis was someone, and he did Jack to the Sound of the Underground. And there were other people, especially DJs in Holland, that were doing very well. But most of them, back in those days you're describing now.
Yes, more in the early times, the early period, yeah.
Most of them just did not have the interest in the technical side of it. And because they did not have that interest, when opportunities came along, they might have grabbed the first one, but probably were not able to pull it off in such a satisfactory way that it developed into an actual career for them. So and there are people that made. Robin Albers had a fantastic production for Plastic Dreams with JD, and but still, I don't know. I mean that I'm doing this. This is my job, and as I'm doing this full time, every day of the week, that obviously also means that the amount of time I spend on it and the amount of practice I get through all that time spending on it, it hopefully raises your level to another level. And that also makes a difference compared to someone who has a daytime job and has to do a career like this on the side. So, and there have been others. There have been, a bunch of colleagues in Holland during a certain time. But, well, I don't know. I count myself lucky that I've just made my decisions, just do it in my own stubborn way, and I'm still here today, basically.
Now, we know you touched a lot of records. How many records did you touch? Do you know the number?
I recently saw on this
roughly
800.
Applause.
Yeah. That's the number. That's a number I saw on Discogs, but it's one of those things I don't keep track of. And funny enough, there are a lot of people that they kind of get into mixes, get into details of mixes, and you must realize that I'm making all these mixes. My job is not to view my or other people's careers as a historian and keeping track like a bookkeeper. I don't have time for that. I do it as a DJ. I do it out of the passion of music. That is my job. And the bookkeeping thing, as you heard earlier, that even my dad was the one required to do all my invoicing. The bookkeeping and the historian part of the whole thing is not my strongest point.
That's okay. We don't need you to be a bookkeeper. We need you to be a scientist, crazy remixer. Now,
yes, that's me. I'll have a T-shirt made of that. Ben Liebrand, crazy scientist remixer.
Crazy scientist teacher remixer. Ben, why didn't you jump in house music in those days? I did, because I'm a disco junkie. What happened then?
Have you heard my house mix of?
No, I'm talking. No. I'm talking late '80s when house music was coming out of Chicago. '90s, because that sound is so electronic.
I know.
So
why I didn't jump on that kind of? It kind of goes back a little bit further. When I had the first interview in Mixmag, it would have been under the header Flavor of the Month. And I said, I would love to do an interview with Mixmag, but not under the header Flavor of the Month, because I don't expect myself to be gone next month. And not restricting myself by, being a Flavor of the Month, I also did not want to restrict myself to just one genre of music, because I love I love so much aspects of music in such a wide way. And, I played lots of house in the early days. I must admit, there is also a bunch of house tracks back in those days, which on the nerdy production side of stuff which I appreciate were a little bit shaky, to say the least. So the drums were a little bit shaky, the piano playing were a little bit shaky, and which probably bothered me the most, that there was no structure to the track. So it sounded like the drum machine was set on, somebody was sitting there doing his best at the keyboards, playing this piano riff, and somebody somewhere at some point started to sing, and at some point stopped with singing, but it had a feel for sure, but it missed a structure which was very much needed to appeal to me. So that's why certain house tracks I really loved, and other ones I just couldn't fathom, because it was like, yeah, I get it, but this should now have a second layer of production and cleaning up whatever was done in the studio. And
but that's where the problem is. The music was so street, so dirty. That's what made it what that music was. And I understand your technical side. You're looking at it from a high level of production work that you were accustomed to. And of course, I can't disagree with you. But what made house music so raw, it was a feeling, heart. And you're not thinking about, let's get the best equipment. These people didn't have any money. They just did it in the, what they had. Like you said, you had a Revox. Maybe they were using a cassette deck to record to, and the hiss didn't make a difference to them, at the time, where the hiss would have pissed me off, now I'd be like, oh no, I'm not playing that. But the whole time,
Funny thing is that back in the day, when you would do a production and you'd have the money, you get a Linn drum. And then Roland came out with the 909, and basically those things just nobody was using them because they didn't have the punch that a Linn drum had. So these things just ended up on the second-hand market, And when they ended up in the second-hand market, they would be bought up by people who could not afford a Lindrum and just had to make do with the 909. And the fun thing is that making do with the 909 turned into this iconic house sound. Not because the 909 was the most optimal drum machine, but that was the one that, everybody who really went for some quality, they got the Lindrum and they just discarded the 909. I know colleagues of mine who asked me, like, Ben, this track is now on the charts and it has this drum sound, and it's what's his drum sound which is on there? I said, well, it's the Roland 909. You must be kidding me. No so way. They went back into their equipment room, and behind the door, lo and behold, was this 909, which they stashed back there 6 years ago, because it just didn't level up to a Lindrum. So they had the machine, didn't even remember they had the machine, and so they got it, dusted it off, and started making productions with it again. So it's a very funny thing that certain pieces of equipment kind of got into the secondhand market and then kind of got to a user base which really brought the best out of it and turned it into this iconic sound. I love house music, but I don't love all house music. And
that's also fine.
With the shows I'm doing, with one of the 3 radio shows I do every week in the house, structure is my thing. So obviously also this show doesn't have minutes long just beats, because that's
you just joined us on True House Stories.
Yeah, that's just if you make a transition and you just have the beats going along for 3 minutes, it's not a big deal synchronizing 2 tracks. So I'd rather skip to the interesting parts and keep it, to put it in one sentence, my house sets are probably a little bit more condensed in such a way where I try to avoid the bits getting boring. So and that's my approach to house music. And I also love to combine it with a lot of acapellas. A lot of remixes and a lot of unofficial remixes are coming out. And I have this vast library of multi-tracks and acapellas, where I then, in my show, combine a great instrumental track with a great acapella in such a way where you would not be able to release it officially, but for the house set it works, and it works perfectly. So it's a kind of a different approach of doing it.
So now forging forward to the EDM times, in the mid 2000s, you had so many Dutch artists coming out, and ghosting was becoming part of the new form of production, where professionals were hidden in a studio and making records for big DJs, and DJs putting their names on it so they can get the big gigs. What did you, being that you're from Holland, what were you thinking about all this? What was, your thoughts about? Because I have my own personal opinion, but you're a real DJ. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, you learned your system, people learned from you, you created a genre of editing, the mix show, radio personality. And now all of a sudden, the fake, I'm not going to mention names, but the fake DJs are coming out. What do you do? What do you, what's your position with this?
Can I refer to being too honest to be polite? Can I go back to that mode now?
Sure. Let's hear this is everyone. Welcome to True House Stories. I mean, this is what we want to know.
I think it is. I think it's disgusting. I have no respect whatsoever, and I know that I've no respect whatsoever for people that be all fancy in interviews and receive their awards at Emmy Awards, Grammy Awards, God knows what kind of awards, whilst I know that they are not doing their work. And I have no appreciation, I have no respect, and it is completely meaningless. It is. I know that there are artists. I know that there are artists where the A&R department kind of scouts for productions and finds a production which is basically done, which is basically ready, and they decide we are going to release this under the flag of, enter that artist name, and that artist will not have been present during the recording, during the production, during the writing of the song. It'll just be a vehicle for releasing this track. And I know that the big audience, that the masses, they don't care. If we rewind a couple of years back to the whole Milli Vanilli disaster.
Oh, girl, you know it's true. Refresh our memories. My God.
Now it's true. Okay, if you rewind back to the whole Milli Vanilli thing, if that would have been today, nobody would have blinked an eye. Nobody would have blinked an eye because, as you say, so many big artists are not even doing their own productions. So many big DJs are not doing their own mix shows. So many people are just flying on other people's qualities and abilities, and yet those are the people on stage receiving the awards. And I have been on stage amongst other people where I knew this reward, which I'm getting now, is for a production where I got the multi-track myself, I did the transfer, I did the production, I did all the overdubs, I did the mix, I did the mastering. I took the tape to the courier service, and it's been
and spoke to the A&R as well, because you had to talk to the A&R person.
Yes, and negotiated my own contracts, negotiated my own fees, arranged everything. This is me. This is 100% Liebrand. And you're standing next to someone where you know this guy comes into the studio. The keyboard player already has figured out some nice keyboard lines. The bass player already figured out some nice bass lines. He has a studio engineer that helps him with all the leads, with all the plugging and the patch bass. He has a mixing engineer who's actually behind the faders, and he's doing all the EQ stuff. And yet you are the guy accepting the award for this whole team, which you're not mentioning. And it's just, it gives me a queasy feeling.
It's tough, especially when you've been in the ground and created something from a seedling into a tree, to watch someone else come in and just grab the award, and you weren't even there from nothing. From inception, it's more like a deception, everyone.
Yes.
In my eyes.
Yes, but you know, the audience doesn't care, and you can also if you can critique anything. For example, the way I work, I use all the hardware and software that can help me. As I said, I couldn't play a solo to save my life, so I'm not a brilliant keyboard player. I spend hours figuring out, you know, what I will do with all the chords, and I'll make it work. So if it comes to being a proper musician, I probably wouldn't classify in that category. But I know that all the stuff I'm putting in there, it's me, and I'm the person that's putting all that stuff in there. So I do have a hard time with this whole the ghost producer thing, and that also comes from. I talked about the DJs being interested in technical sides, going along with the evolution of technology, and the DJs which are not. Well, most of the times the DJs which are not interested in technology, those were also the DJs that have to rely on ghost producers. Somebody who's also into technologies, for example, Armin van Buuren, he is very much a nerd like me. He has his own studio.
Very nice guy.
Runs his own studio, and although he has been, one of the front runners before even the term EDM came out, having the whole trance thing, and he's willing to put his reputation on the block by not sticking to just one genre, just to try to spread out and to venture into new territories. And he has the guts to do that, and he has the technical know-how to do that. So I very much appreciate the stuff he's doing. And although he, for example, also with his album, they have a perfect duo with Benno de Goeie, where they bounce ideas back and forth, which perfectly works. But I know that he's not one of the people that says, okay, let somebody else do it and just stick Armin van Buuren on it. No, that's not Armin. That's not the kind of person he is. And yeah, I have a hard time. I have a hard time finding respect for those kind of people. And that also, if we're on the honest, the true house story department now, that also kind of extends into drug use. That if a DJ or a producer has to rely on drug use to achieve what he hopes to achieve, two sides to that. If he's a DJ and he needs drugs to perform, that it is partially me listening to the drugs perform and not him perform. That's one part. The other part is when the floor is filled with people that rely on drugs to get that high from that DJ set, then how the hell are any of their reviews relevant in any way? Because their reviews are not based in reality. Their reviews are based in a chemical perception of what that night, how that night went down. Mm-hmm. So I have a very hard time finding respect in those areas as well. So yeah.
I totally understand. It's a tough one to swallow. They say this is a tough pill to swallow. So saying that, thank you. I appreciate you for you clearing this up. Where are we now, Ben? And where are we going into the future? You know, where's Ben Liebrand taking us?
Where are we now? I'm so happy that last year, also with collaboration of the Dutch record company High Fashion, I've been able to do the remixes for Johnny Guitar Watson, Real Mother Foya, and being allowed to take it into a disco version, and the record company having faith in my idea, my crazy idea of taking a 100 BPM track up to 118 and turn it into a disco track. We had a bit of a set down with the beautiful set of remixes we did for Pet Shop Boys, West End Girls. A remix which came out on the 23rd of October, which shot up to the number one position in the one charts on Tracksource, and then shot up into the main charts, and then it was gone. And it turned out that we stumbled into a decades-long, probably unresolved disagreement between the Pet Shop Boys and Bobby Orlando, which is a huge shame, especially because so many people spend so many time on perfecting these remixes. Anyways.
Wait, let me stop you for a second. Did you say that there was a legal issue from Bobby Orlando?
The thing is that we got the original multi-track of West End Girls through Bobby Orlando and the company representing him. All the paperwork was done, but the publishing company, for the first time in 40 years, interfered with the release of this remix because apparently there is still some unresolved stuff going on between Bobby Orlando and the Pet Shop Boys. So they just don't want any remixes of that version out, ever, by anyone. And that was something that apparently there's a paperwork that kind of proves that. Haven't seen it yet. But yeah, so they kind of put a stop on that. Anyway, we're still working on that because there might still be ways to do a remix based on the Stephen Hague multi-track, which was made a year later. Anyways, some troubles, but amongst those troubles, still a fantastic 2020 when it comes to production. Some other things are very important that I'm coming close to 2 years doing in the house, which obviously gives me a proper insight of the goings on at this moment in time in the house scene, which is fantastic. One of the programs I'm doing for Dutch radio is called the Almost Weekend Mini Mix, and coming up with a top-notch mix, mega mix, remix, multi-track mashup each and every week kind of forced me to up my game when it comes to that as well. And bottom line is that I am, when it comes to sound, when it comes to production, when it comes to the framework to making those production, having the right sounds, having the right drum sounds, having everything in place to make this stuff, I've never been in a better place than I am today. So I'm looking forward to doing some really nice stuff in this year.
And the last and final question, which is the most important with this COVID, how are you hanging on? And do you believe that we're all going to attend back to what life was pre-COVID with the club scene, the bars, and music?
So the first part of the question about the hanging in is we had a kind of a big scare back in 1995, where that was in between 93 when all the music became crap and me getting into all the visual stuff. And we had a big customer providing us almost all our work. And we lost that customer, not through a fault of our own. That was a rude wake-up call. The kind of rude wake-up call that a lot of DJs are having today, where they have focused all their income just on DJing and don't have any other cylinders on which their company is running. So back in 95, we had our scare. And that means that when 2020 and all this insaneness came to be, our company is running on a bunch of cylinders, doing artwork, doing the website, doing the radio shows, doing the productions, doing the remixes, doing visual assignments for other people, promo videos, time-lapse videos, a whole bunch of things. So our company is running on a whole bunch of cylinders. Our little company, I mean, it's just Brenda and me. So when this one cylinder cut out, we still were able to get through 2020, which is, something I can only recommend to other people as well, going forward from now, that you should not have a company running just on one cylinder, because 2020 has proven that crazy shit will happen. So that's one part of the thing. And the other part is that I am absolutely convinced that this too shall pass. This too shall pass, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, the sooner the better. But this too shall pass. And when this stuff is over and when it's safe to go out again, people will be waiting for you. People will be waiting for me to get that dance floor rocking again, to get the music going, and to give everybody a great time again. And even with the Grandmix, which was just recently completed, the Grandmix over 2020, I spent a long time thinking up an intro. These Grandmixes each have an intro. Most of the times they're science fiction based. And this year I was just like, it has to be clear that, first of all, that the people who love music, they are not alone. So every time you're listening to music, you can fairly surely assume that somebody else somewhere on this planet is also listening to that kind of music, to the same music you love. So you're not alone. And although the dance floors are now empty and it's silent in the clubs, when it's safe to do so, people will be back. And it's up to you and it's up to me to provide the best we can at that point. So let's prepare ourselves for that moment and let's be ready, more ready than we ever were, with great sets, with great, with new developments in technology, with everything that can help you to bring the best set possible to the dance floors of this world, because people are waiting for us.
I know. And we got to keep them ready and just hope, keep them ready. And we don't want to say waiting. We got to keep them ready, because when that door opens, it's going to be like, fire!
Yes. And that moment will come. And, the stupid thing is that this whole COVID thing, obviously, it's like the weather. You can't change a thing. You just have to wait. As hard as it is, you just have to wait until it blows over. And just do yourself a favor. Don't let it drive yourself nuts, because then not only you'll have COVID on your case, but you're also, making it very difficult for yourself by, I don't know, maybe developing or nurturing mental problems as well. So let's try to just see this thing as a patch of freaking bad weather, but it will blow over. It will blow over, and then it's up to the Lenny Fontanas and the Ben Liebrands and all our colleagues on this planet to get the party starting again.
Rock the house. Rock the house.
Yeah.
It's going to be debauchery when this thing turns on. It's going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah. They're going to be hanging off the rooftops. It's going to be, I know it'll be crazy, but to get to that point, that's the hard part. It's the bridge. As I always say, the bridge of getting there. We know the ending is there. We could see it, but we have to get over that bridge and bring it home for everyone. Ben, I want to thank you, my friend. You are an icon, a good friend of mine, a mentor for many. Your mega mixes are played religiously with everyone. You have a fan base that is crazy over the Liebrand sound. And keep it going, my friend. And many more to come. We wish you all the success that Ben Liebrand can bring us.
Thank you so much. And the only thing I can say, I'm so fortunate that I can still do this. That's this still.
And be paid to do it.
See? Be paid to do your hobby. How great is that?
You can't beat that. This is when you can, and stay home. He's already been working from home, everyone. It's not like he never left home. Here's the difference. You've all learning how he operates. So he's been ready for this for a few decades. He's been waiting for something like this. As many of us have already assimilated to the home front. It's okay. Yes. It's okay. And never stop dreaming, everyone. As Ben Liebrand has taught us in this, you could take an idea and you can manifest it and come out of it something, but you got to try. And he also said, very importantly, research everything around you.
Be prepared.
Preparation is the job.
Yes.
Whatever you go into, be prepared. Know what you're dealing with. Try to find out what the best situations that can make your life a bit easier are. Don't take the hard way. Find out first. Don't try to do it and then learn. Learn and then do it before you kill yourself.
There are enough other people on this planet to drive you nuts. So don't drive yourself nuts.
Yes. Ben Liebrand, what do we expect? We get in the next Mega Mix and his weekly radio show, which he rocks you every week on the radio. Another thing that people don't know about, Ben could speak fluent German as well. I've heard him, and he speaks very, very good German.
Kein Problem.
Right. So the German market that loves Ben has been hearing Ben speak German for many years, and he speaks it as well as he speaks his Dutch. So good on you, brother. Thank you again, Ben, and stay safe. Keep those huskies. And I know you live near Santa Claus because he's up there in the North Pole area. He's got Santa Claus as his neighbor with the snow. And he was helping Santa set up his sleighs with all the toys for the kids during Christmas.
Hey, Lenny, thank you so much for having me. And it was a pleasure and a privilege.
Oh, we loved you. We think you're amazing.